Good morning.
Wow, I didn't know I was that funny.
I don't know why it cracks me up every time when I do that. I'm such a moron. It's like simple-minded people think stupid stuff's funny. So there you go. I have no excuse.
It's like I'm in Forrest Gump movie or something. Jenni.
Yes, possibly. So you have something on, you just threw something in there. Do you want to show something this morning?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I mean, don't you feel good? Look at all this green. This is my stock screener right here. This is all, everything's good. The economy's so good. Look at all this green on here, Jenni. Everybody's excited. There's so much money in the stock market.
Wait.
All your big boys here, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Nvidia, all these big boys, Tesla.
Well, now Lilly doesn't look very good.
Yeah, that's all right.
Google doesn't look very good.
Well, they're only down 2/3%. It's all right. They'll bounce out of there. It'll all be green and happy trails. And
so why is this?
Well, because remember I told you that the Federal Reserve is going to buy our treasuries.
Yeah.
Normally we sell our debt. We sell our debt out to other countries.
Yeah.
They finance us.
Right.
And the Federal Reserve had a meeting last week or whatever it was. And I said they were going to go ahead and buy back some of the treasuries. And they're going to do that to the tune of over the second quarter here. They're going to spend $250 billion or a little more. And then in the third quarter, they've already committed 850. So $1.1+ trillion is already going to be purchased back by the Federal Reserve, which is insane.
So I'm just curious, Michael, where's that money come from?
Yeah, it comes from that. That's the whole thing. It just comes out of complete thin air. I mean, it is invisible.
It always reminds me of, remember that video that went viral of that lady? You know, she was so excited about her Obama phone.
Oh yeah.
And remember that? She goes, "It's Obama's money."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at like the current state of the everyday person, okay, so the Bureau of Labor and Statistics just came out and they said that 48% of people are living literally paycheck to paycheck. Or no, 78% of people are living paycheck to paycheck.
78% of everybody in the U.S.?
Yeah, get this. And
holy cow.
If this is the one that's even kind of more traumatic, I think.
I don't know. That's pretty traumatic, actually.
The 48%, if everyday regular American had some type of financial emergency, just, you know, nothing like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but literally like, just $10,000 or $20,000 or something like
A
that.
bad
Right?
emergency room
Yeah.
visit or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
a financial emergency.
Yeah.
Then 48% of the people would go into poverty due to a financial emergency. Lost your job temporarily for 3 to 6 months or, something like that. 48% would go in, pretty much just go straight into poverty, be classified poverty level. But, we're looking at the highest amount of bank loan defaults right now, highest amount of car loan defaults. Just the entire debt service industry is just, it is insane. But, like I showed you the stock screen, it's all good on Wall Street because easy money's coming. The Federal Reserve is going to just keep pumping money in. But what I want, you to realize and other people, if we don't add trillions of dollars to our country out of thin air, we have no country. Literally, if we don't add that money, then 401ks go like this. Everybody's retirements go like this. And it is just an absolute sad state of affairs that we're so disconnected with the actual financial and economic times of what's going on. It is really insane. And I told you, a month ago back, we were putting on $1 trillion in adding $1 trillion to our deficit here every 100 days. Well, that's already down to 90. That number's already down to 90 days. And now for the year, we were putting on $1 trillion just in interest for the year. Well, that's already at like $1 trillion, almost $1.25 trillion.
Well, now. So what, honestly though, what happens? Because it seems to me like everything at some point just has to go bye-bye.
Yeah, you're gonna have a debt complete default. So cash, the US dollar will go the way of all fiat currency. It will just be inflated into, massive amounts of numbers to buy a loaf of bread. But in the meantime, they'll come out with their new system, whatever that new denomination is going to be.
Ugh.
That's part of the plan. That's part of the reset. But they know that no fiat currency has ever survived, ever. Our dollar is going like this. The value of our dollar is going like this. You can't buy anything like you used to be able to buy.
Oh no. I joked with I got a penny back the other day and I was like,
a penny.
Yay.
A penny.
Oh, frame it. It's like it's it's just, and I'm laughing, but it's not funny. And I get it. It's just not. I do think, as you've said before, people need to be putting money in hard stuff.
Yeah.
If you can put stuff in money in hard stuff.
Yeah. You need to have physical assets. If you want to have I love cryptocurrency. If you want to have a little bit, that's fine too. But, this isn't financial advice, but like when I talked to Mark Sherwood, are you going to say something real quick?
Well, you're not going to like what I say.
Well, there's good, and there's bad. I saw.
So our friend at V1SUT
I saw our deal. But you have to remember, in the same vein, Jenny, more crime, more fraud, more deceit, more everything has happened in the US dollar than it has with anything in the world. So, it is.
I agree.
You're always going to have bad players in every currency or every type of deal. Unfortunately, that's just, there's corrupt, satanic, evil people around.
So speaking of that, do you want to start off on that note?
Sure.
You want to start off on that?
That's fine with me.
All right. So we were going to talk about just things in the news today, right? Because we just don't ever have time to talk about things in the news, really. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So I've got all my little tabs up here, so I'll start sharing my screens. Let's start with this one. There it is. So it's going to take me a second to navigate all of these screens because I've got so many of them up today. All right. So amended public school chaplain bill gets Oklahoma House of Representatives approval. So the possibility of having chaplains in Oklahoma's public schools moved closer to reality on Wednesday with the House of Representatives' narrow passage of Senate Bill 36, Senator Nathan Dahm Broken Arrow. House sponsor Kevin West compared his concept of school chaplains to those in the military or police and fire departments. His intent, he said, and I like Kevin. I like him. He's a very sweet man, and I like his wife as well. They're just very sweet people. But here's the problem. The road to hell.
It's paved with good intentions.
So his intent, he said, is to provide students, faculty, and staff with someone to whom they can unburden themselves. Well, and Kevin, I get it. And Nathan, I get it. But here's the reason why.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this before you say what you're going to say.
Okay, please do.
I mean, I think we can all agree 100%. The moral value system, the disciplinary system, everything that has to do with our kids in school is massively degraded. It has gone the opposite direction of a good moral Christian value-based type of ethical responsibility. There's no qualms about that in any possible way.
Oh, I know.
I mean, we do need to solve there does need to be something to solve that moral dilemma that's happening.
There is
in the schools. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But like you're getting ready to say, if you open the road for one, you have to open it for all.
Oh, was that what I was going to say? Well, hold on. There is a solution to all of this. His name is Jesus. But see, the thing is well, I'm going to go down that road again in a second, but I want to finish what this said. So I've gone down a little bit in the article, and it says opponents argued that trained counselors and psychologists are a better solution if that is the goal. Well, we all know that the counselors at school are basically training kids in nothing that's going to help the moral upheaval that we're having right now. It's just to make it worse. Do you want to wear a dress? I know. Do you want to? So it's not, that's not going to help. So they said SB 36 at best will have minimal impact at worst, said Representative Mickey Dolans, Democrat of Oklahoma City. It's an attempt to further insert Christian nationalism, dominionism, the new apostolic reformation, and the seven mountain tenets into public schools.
I'll be back in 1 second. I got somebody at my door I got to get. Just
okay. So first of all, I get Christian nationalism. I've heard that term. I don't know what it means other than it's a lefty term to kind of denigrate Christians. And I get that. But I don't even know what the new apostolic reformation is I have no idea what that is. But again, it doesn't really matter. The point is, he's saying at a more basic level, opponents were concerned that bringing in a chaplain from one faith or faction would lead to community quarrels and create legal liabilities. There was also some concern about the effect on faith. And here's an interesting thing. So I'm not even sure, actually, that I'm going to call myself a Republican anymore. I'm not sure what to do about that, because I look at the Republican Party right now and I see all the infighting and the ridiculousness. If we give one more damn dime to, Ukraine, I think I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it may be like all of my insides will just violently come purging it. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but I don't know that I can stand being called a Republican at this point. And then you say you're a conservative, but what are you conserving? Because the Republicans haven't really conserved anything. So I don't even know what to call myself anymore. But here's the crazy thing. So here's John Waldron of Tulsa, who's a Democrat, saying The quickest way to kill and erode the value of religious faith in Oklahoma is to cloak it in the coercive power of the state. I'm sorry, but he's 100% correct. This is another one of those things in which we've been told one thing. Well, there is a separation between church and state, and that's not true. We've been told that, and it's not true. There is no separation between church and state. We should be able to involve state in church matters. And I mean, right? I mean, isn't that what we've said, Michael?
Yeah, that's what everybody says, I think.
Okay. And then you even have people who will say, well, we only got that from a letter that was written by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Church.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the thing. We all know about propaganda. We all know how propaganda works. And a lot of us see it in black and white. Well, Republicans are right, Democrats are wrong. Independents just don't even know what to make of themselves, right? So what would happen if you turned propaganda on Christians and basically said, yes, there's no separation of church and state. We don't want separation of church and state. And then all of a sudden, the state started creeping in on the church.
Well, I don't think they'd like that, but.
Well, let's talk about COVID for your favorite topic. Let's talk about COVID for a second. What happened? Whitney says,
I still talk about COVID literally on a daily basis to my kids.
This is hysterical. Whitney goes, at this point, I guess I'm a revolutionary.
You know what? For whatever reason, those comments don't show up on my side.
No, because that's on Rumble. I have to read them to you. So we're not getting any comments on the other side yet. So y'all start commenting there. But no, I'm having to read you off what the comments are on Rumble. And that's just funny. Anyway, because I'm with Whitney. I don't know what to call myself anymore then, because I'm a Christian. I believe in limited government. I believe in the sanctity of individualism. I believe in the sanctity of babies in the womb. I mean, all these things that are conservative traits, I believe, but I'm sitting here going, John Waldron says the quickest way to kill and erode the value of religious faith in Oklahoma is to cloak it in the coercive power of the state. So what happened during COVID? We were just getting ready to talk about that. What happened? It happened in Canada. It happened in Australia in churches. What did they do?
Yeah, they shut down because the state told them to.
Even happened in America.
Yeah.
Even happened in America. All these churches going, oh, well, the state's telling us we have to shut down, so we're going to shut down. That's the coercive power of the state on church.
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, so let's not mince any words also, Jenny. All of these other, like all the things you just described, these are all a product of the government, period. Like the sanctity of, protecting all these institutions and things like that. The only way that these things go down, like as big an issue as abortion is, it's only because it's subsidized so heavily by the government. All of those things across the board, it's at the hand of government to create dependency. Ultimately, they do not want, like when I say a sovereign individual, I'm talking about someone that is self-reliant, does not need the government, does not need all of that intervention. We can pretty much rule ourselves in every capacity.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Are churches dependent on the state?
Well, I would say, in one way or another, when they're tax exempt, then yeah, they're depending on the government. This is the reason
why I love you so much. Because you get it. Churches are now dependent on the state because they go to them, genuflect, kiss their ring.
Yeah.
Can I please have my tax exempt status?
Yeah.
Well, what happens when that's how the state got the idea that it was okay to tell the churches to shut down. Yeah. Well, we let you have your money. You do what we want. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, how has that helped? How has having this so-called, not separation of church and state? I mean, that's a huge, huge thing. And you hear these Christians saying over and over again, well, we can't have a separation between church and state because we've got to be able to reach those kids for Jesus in a public school. Hello. It's not your job to reach kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the parents' job to reach the kids. And yes, we should all go out and be salt and light to everybody else, and we should speak the word of Jesus. However, if you do that in a public school, here's what's going to happen.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. So here it is. We have the Satanic Temple seeks to introduce ministers in Oklahoma public schools if chaplain bill becomes law. So do we or do we not have an equal opportunity clause basically in the Constitution?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was getting at earlier. If you open the door for one sect of religion, you have to allow it. I mean, you can't, I mean, this is America. You have to allow everybody their fair shot at these kids.
I'm going to see. Hold on a second.
Well, and think about this, Jenny. I always kind of spiral out towards the corporate, and financial side of things. What's going to happen when you have entities that are created in one way or another by these large corporations to get into, to get their, with the chaplain type of bill where they're like, hey, we need our people in the school also, just so they can have another foothold inside the data, inside, the contact or whatever. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility that you're going to have some serious financial interest down the road looking at, hey, here's another avenue into these schools where, we can help steer the narrative.
Well, and remember how people complained about us complaining about the school choice bill? And I said, but here's what's going to happen. You're doing this as a voucher. And the minute you give the state, public money to a private institution, then, I mean, how do you decide what institution then you're not going to give it to? Because then at that point, it's all private. And you go, well, I'm not going to give it to the Satanic school, but I am going to give it to the madrasa. I mean, how are we not, where does this come from that we can't determine that that's a big, huge problem?
Yeah.
So I think the thing, and I wanted to pull this out, so I'm gonna show you something else. Just a second. So this is the Senate votes on the this I keep forgetting. Here's something that happens. Oh, this is interesting. So apparently the bill, Senate Bill 36, was an Open Records Requirement Act requiring disclosure of recordings from certain law enforcement equipment. So that was what it basically was originally. And so then when you go over here to the House, now it's education permitting school districts to employ or accept volunteers. Volunteer chaplains. So that's the other thing that we probably need to talk about too. Why is it that they make this huge deal about, well, if you're going to get a bill on, you'd better make sure that you get it in by this date, and we're not going to recognize it if you don't make sure you. Why do we do that if they can just walk in there and go, oh, you know what, I didn't really mean that anyway, I'm just going to get that and put something else in? So apparently that's what Dom did. He just put something else in that bill. That's called bait and switch, actually, is what that's called. If you were buying like a toaster and they give you a coffee maker, or you think you're buying a 5-year warranty and you're only buying a 1, that's called bait and switch.
Well, and think about this, Jenny. They're all up in arms, okay, to get these volunteer chaplains in the schools. And I don't have that major of an issue with having someone of, hopefully some other moral guidance in there. But then again, you open the door. So I'm not like 100% against the chaplains. Yes, there's issues there, but we as parents can't even get in and have lunch with our kids. Where are legislators at protecting the parents' rights to even go in and have lunch, sit down in the lunchroom in our elementary schools with our kids?
But you make an excellent point. So we've got to put chaplains in there, but you're not interested in upholding the individual liberty of parents to go in to a school that they pay for, where their child is being educated to have lunch. I mean, have this make sense to me in some way that I can get it.
Yeah. And I'm not just saying that. I cannot go have lunch with my third grader at his school.
Because
I can go
why?
check him out. I can go check him out and go take him to lunch. I can't go sit with him as a positive role model.
Because
in
why?
His lunchroom.
Tell people why.
Well, because after COVID, now there's all kinds of security issues. But in an intimate conversation I had with the site administrator, the principal, and the counselor there, they basically told me there's parents that they do not want having access to the lunchroom because they don't want the parents to say something to another child, or they say there may be some kind of physical altercation or incident or something like that. They literally told me that. And I said, well, plus they said, we don't need a whole bunch of parents in here during the lunchtime and this and that. And I'm just like, hey, we can, we can at least like sign up and say, here's 4 or 5 parents that want to come in, this month. It's not like you're going to be inundated with 1,000 parents trying to go in and have lunch. You're going to have a mom or a dad, maybe once a week, maybe going in to do something like that. But it was all.
So wouldn't you rather have the parents than just some unknown chaplain? And let's go back to what V1SUT, our blogger, says frequently. Wherever kids are going to be, there are going to be some kind of predators.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that we haven't had clergy predators.
Yeah.
So how are these chaplains all being vetted? And I guess the bottom line is this. Things can sound really great. Oh, I think it's great for kids to be introduced to Jesus, and I'm glad they have somebody to talk to, and it all sounds swell. Who doesn't want that? But guess what? I got to tell you that the one thing that I don't want is I don't want this.
Yeah.
That's what I don't want. And if you're going to tell me we're not going to have that, because you and I had an entire podcast on after school Satan clubs.
Yeah.
That were even in some schools.
Well,
already.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there for just a second, Jenny. I just want to reiterate this. You said, what are their qualifications? Is it literally like you just go to an online chaplain course and, answer some questions? What's going to, and I'll tell you what, a lot of these, I actually watch a lot of these podcasts with these satanic guys. They have more knowledge of the Bible than most Christians. So what's going to stop one of these guys from signing up as a chaplain, a Christian chaplain in a state like Oklahoma or Florida or Louisiana or wherever they're doing these? What's going to stop one of those guys from saying, hey, I'm a chaplain, and then going in there with ulterior motives?
Or they can't even keep pedophile teachers and coaches out of schools.
Yeah.
How many times have we talked about that? To me, kick everybody out, no school clubs, no anything like that. Kick everybody out and then go back to the basics. That's what you got to do, because guess what? Our kids don't even get the basics.
Well, yeah, let's hit on that for just a second.
We're the lowest we've ever been.
Yeah. It's one thing if we were at, an academic pinnacle in this state. Not only are we terrible, but we're at the very bottom. We're at the very bottom of all academic standards in this country. And the standards are so low. We've already talked about that in the past, how the standards are continuing to drop in public education. But when we're talking about even at a good school, Okay, let's take a school like Edmond. I'm intimate with the results of Edmond. You take a good school in a good community with wealthy people. They have a foundation. I mean, they have everything you could possibly want. The kids are still only 60% proficient, and that's giving it that's giving it at the highest possible level. So you've got 40% of your kids in one of the best communities out there that are still way below proficiency. They can't read, they can't do math, and that's just a continuation. I mean, if you can't get those numbers up in a place like that, I mean, think of the rest of the state. I mean, we know it's well below 30% in the regular kind of rural area in the state. And then you go to like place like Oklahoma City or Tulsa, it's like 20% are proficient. I mean, so it's one thing if we're talking about, hey, our school system is awesome. We're producing scholars. We're producing, great people that have critical thinking skills that are going to contribute to society. But we're running around with all this stuff. We can't even have 50-50 academics. I mean, it's unbelievable how everyone just completely skates over the fact that our proficiencies here are absolutely at the bottom of the barrel.
Well, and I mean, and having people there for kids to talk to, that's not going to fix the proficiency. And
Yeah.
if you can't graduate kids who don't know how to read and can't critically think, then you're going to get a whole land of automatons who will do whatever the government tells them to do anyway. But again, isn't that the point?
Yeah. Well,
And yet,
that is
instead of dealing with the root of the issue, we keep doing these goobery, bizarro, let's do this kind of things. And it's just not, it's as though there's just no formal thought down the road. And I've talked about this before. I think one of the reasons why I don't want to be a Republican anymore is because I have not seen a Republican who can think this far from their end of their nose. Everything is all like, well, we just believe that this is going to happen right now. They can't seem to try to figure out and game the system. Okay, well, if somebody does this, what's going to happen on down the line? Then, maybe we ought to consider that. They don't even, it's like it's all for show. It's like kabuki theater. It's like, what the Japanese used to do. I mean, let's put them in dresses and get them to do this, and then people won't notice what else is going. It's bread and circuses.
Well, and we've seen that, and you've proven that just with how the money side of all this is what really controls the politics here. If someone's truly Republican and they're looking at someone's platform that is a true conservative, true Republican, actually out there putting themselves out there running, and those people just continue to lose and lose and lose and lose, and you're just like, what what is going on here?
I mean, it's true. So let's move on, because I think we've done that one to death, but we've got another one that now this is actually pretty cool. And I want to hold up our yay Janice Danforth, our friend in Tulsa, because she got really involved in this HB 2100. SB 1100. SB 1100 was again another one of these bills that came as one thing, but then they gut it and put something else in it. And so the original, I'm trying to think of what the original one was. Oh, the original was crimes and punishments, modifying elements of certain offenses related to aiding suicide, prohibiting certain communication. So that was what it was originally when it went into the Senate. And then when it came over to the House, and we'll talk about this more in a second, it became this other bill, and it was a bill basically to remember Nex Benedict, right?
Yeah.
And she was a poor girl who had just had a really horrible life. And it just, as a mom, it breaks my heart to see kids like this that don't have good parents, that don't have good home lives, that don't have somebody there for them. And yes, you could argue that's a great reason why we need to have, chaplains in schools or for these kids. But there's got to be something to do outside of a school, a private organization that you can put together that's completely separated from any state issue. But this was a really good little article that was in Daily Caller. And part of the reason why the person who wrote this, Mary Rook, wrote this was because she had seen some of Janice Danforth's tweets about this particular bill, SB 1100, and about the fact that it would just basically wipe out our ability to speak freely about things. And so she actually wrote a pretty good little article about this. Again, it's in Daily Caller. Red state bill could see residents jailed for online speech is what the name of it is. So SB 1100 amends sections 1172 and 1953 of the Oklahoma Computer Crimes Act, passed in 2021 to stop cyberbullying through any telecommunications like texts, emails, phone calls, and posts made to online platforms. Under SB 1100, it would be unlawful to willingly, now listen to this, quote, make any comment, request, suggestion, or proposal which is obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, or indecent, with intent to harass or threaten to inflict injury, physical harm, or severe emotional distress to any person. So before we go on, severe emotional distress can be for you a completely different thing than it can be for me.
Yeah.
And when we get into this situation where we decide that we're going to use words that have many different meanings, not in Webster's dictionary, but in real life presentation, then you end up creating a world in which you can literally dictate what people say, because you can say, oh, well, that made me feel, that was intentionally distressing. That emotionally distressed me. Well, what are you going to do? Argue with that person? Well, that's stupid. I mean, how can that emotionally distress you? Right?
You don't even want to get me going down this road of
Sorry.
this stuff.
Well, we probably should, though, because people need to hear this kind of thing. So here's just a little section that she took out of the bill. So basically, this was all over Dagny Benedict, and what made it worse was that our attorney general basically came out and backed this bill. Now, here's a frightening thing. So is it okay for our attorney general to not understand the nexus of free speech? Just
Is it
curious.
okay to not understand that?
Yeah. I mean,
No.
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure we want our attorney general, who is supposed to protect the state's interests.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we want him to understand what the nexus of free speech is, which is the First Amendment in the Constitution of the United States, which never says anything about Michael. If Michael, your mom wears army boots.
Yeah, that could literally emotionally destroy me, Jenny.
I'm sorry. I talk about your mother and her army boots.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous and stupid, but the problem is that when you go down this road, there isn't an end. There isn't an end. So whatever anybody else thinks is emotionally distressing becomes that issue. Well, and here's the thing that even bothers me more than that. Andy No wrote, he's been really great about writing all kinds of different things about culture issues. He followed Antifa around. He was actually embedded with Antifa for a really long time and wrote a book about Antifa. But he has really understood some of the cultural issues of our time very well. And he wrote this. So at this, he points out, this guy went to the towns in Oklahoma and Arkansas where Dagny Nex Benedict grew up. He spoke with the girl's grandfather, who said she was abused and raped by her biological father. The girl took her own life, and her death was exploited by leftists and Democrats. So we're going to do a little thing here. And it's not in that one. It's in this one. Okay, so let's see, Andy, if you're going to tell me that it was just the Democrats that were exploiting this. So how many Republicans do we see on here? Boy, a whole lot. Gallagher, Green, Hall, Hamilton, Haste, Howard, Jack, Jett, Kidd, McCourtney, Murdoch, Newhouse, Paxton, Pemberton, Prieto, Pugh, Rader, Rogers, Racino, Seyfried, Stanley, Stevens, Stewart, Thompson, Weaver, Bergstrom, Bullard, Daniels, Garvin, Duggar. All of these were Republicans that voted for this bill. Oh, I feel so terrible about what happened to Dagny Benedict. We're going to have to clamp down on this. We don't want this to happen again.
Well, go back. I want to show you something. Go
the
back.
Road, one more time. Let's say it together. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't really care what kind of intentions these Republicans thought they had, but essentially what all of these Republicans were doing would have, had this gone through, silenced regular speech by regular citizens of Oklahoma. Let that sink in. It's not Democrats. Nope. Sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
Go back to that article. And then go back up to the top of it. Go back down. Okay. Yeah, right there. You know, where it says it would be unlawful, you know, to willingly make any of these comments, blah, blah, blah. You know, they always get it with throwing in the threat to inflict injury. Yes, that is what the real problem is with any kind of free speech. You can't invoke, you know, danger or injury to someone. But when you throw that one little sentence in with everything else, you know, this may, you know, you can't say this because, or this, you know, then it just brings the preface in there to include all of that under one umbrella, you know, and that's where they can get away with this stuff of shutting us down in some capacity, because that one little, hey, the injury part's in there, but you know, if you say something intimidating to someone, or someone feels bad because you said their mom wears army boots, you know,
that was an insult when I was in high school.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
But you're right. The problem is the culture that's around these people. These people, I mean, I know that bullying is an issue, but bullying is, this is my opinion. I've got 5 kids. I teach my kids as best I can because they all get bullied. I mean, every single kid literally gets bullied in some capacity. Even the bullies get bullied, you know, at some point. So,
well, and your kids bully each other.
Yeah, but it's a matter of just personal empowerment, personal responsibility. You know, if you don't let those words hurt you, you know, here and here, it's how you take those words.
Right.
You know, do you internalize those words, or do you laugh at those words? I mean, I literally tell my kids all the time, you know, they're fighting back and forth or whatever. I'm like, you're just playing right. Your brother is on purpose doing this because you react. Quit reacting. You know, respond by doing nothing or ignoring it or laughing at, or like I tell my kids, I say, tell me more. What else can you say? Go ahead. Tell me something else.
Yeah.
You know, and as soon as you do that, the bully doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that's kind of boiling it down to whatever, but we're taught, you know, such victim mentality.
We
You know,
are.
that is today's
Yeah,
time. I mean, your
it is.
environment doesn't make you who you are, you know, unless you let it. You know, if now there are kids that there's physical violence, things like that. That's a whole nother story. We're
Right.
talking about the people that you can't even look at or they feel threatened.
Yeah.
And because they feel threatened, because you just look at them, or you have a shirt that says something, or you have a flag on your car or a flag on your house. I mean, I literally have people that walk up, they quit walking up and down my street because of my flag. Literally.
Wow. It's like a cross to a vampire or something.
Yeah. But you know, there's truth and there's reality, and then there's, you know, what you believe. And just because you believe or think or
Right.
feel something is a certain way doesn't mean that's the truth. You know, you
Right.
can believe that, you can believe with all your heart, you can take a polygraph and believe that the sun is blue.
Yeah.
I mean, that does that mean it's blue? Does that mean that the wavelength of light is actually not, you know,
Yeah.
26,000 Kelvin or whatever it is?
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah. No, I mean it was completely bizarre. And so basically they talked about this particular thing, and apparently Chris Banning did a really great job of, you know, working this in the House and making it go away.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't understand the intent besides trying to put a stamp on the death of a child. It irritates me that the death of a child is being used in such a political way. It shouldn't be used.
Yeah.
And I think he's exactly correct. I thought that was just, he said, I've worked on this bill for 3 days straight, pretty much putting everything else aside because of how dangerous the language was. It's already law in Oklahoma that if I tell you to stop texting me and you continue to text me, it's against the law right now. This bill defines severe emotional distress to mean significant mental suffering or distress that requires medical or other professional treatment or counseling. Banning agreed this could mean Oklahomans are at risk for fines or jail time for simply misgendering someone online if that person receives counseling for being misgendered.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, honestly, and this is apparently one of the writers at Epic Times basically was, you know, came out and said the same thing. And she pulled Janice Danforth's tweet. Attention, Oklahoma, call or email your House rep right now and tell them to vote no on SB 1100. It's scheduled to be heard on the floor today. This bill must die. The fact that this bill already passed the Senate shows how red we are not. Well, I love that Janice gets it. I mean, and it's so sad because we get people who tune in and I start on a rant about Republicans and you can see them just tuning out. And I'm like, but until we realize that we're being hoodwinked, we're going to keep getting hoodwinked. I mean, people will absolutely moan and scream about how can they use our money to pay Ukraine and then blah, blah, and they'll get on this huge rant about it. But yet they find out that what's going on in their state is in way worse, even in some ways, than what's going on at the federal government, because the state is where we reside. The state is where we hope to have our individual rights protected as citizens. And I don't mean hope, I mean expect by the Constitution to have our individual rights protected. And these people aren't doing that. These people are melting down into these emotional pools of, oh, I feel so sorry for this person. And we must, I mean, it's absolutely,
Yeah.
Who are you?
But it goes hand in hand, Jenny. I mean, it goes hand in hand. You know, you said they need to protect our individual rights. Well, when you have a government that teaches kids, basically disempowers them, you know, with our current education process, these kids aren't empowered. You know, they're anything you say and do just completely affects them, and it rolls up, you know, into politics and everything else. But that's what they want, because the only way if you're independent, you don't need the government. You don't need all the government's help. You don't need all the government everything. You don't need all the government intervention. So the only way the government grows is by creating that constant dependent state. You know, they love all of this division across the board. They love that, you don't have block parties anymore with your
No,
neighborhoods
so
and all just
sad.
the community that was the
Yeah.
community back in like when I was a kid in the
Yeah.
80s and early
Yeah.
90s. Those things have completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And now you have a
Yeah.
complete different culture. You have this victim mentality. You can't even look at someone, but that's what the government wants because we can't solve our own problems. We've got to have this government intervention. We've got to have the government say, you can't say this to somebody else. You can't, you can't look like this. You can't wear that. You can't drive here. All that stuff is coming, as these bills keep rolling through. But I want to also just give one more example because I got a text on my phone about bullying when I was talking about that. So I'll just give a quick example of my youngest son. So, we're pretty much through this school year. We're almost out here. For the first 3 months, my youngest son was being massively bullied every single day at school. And he's, in third grade. Well, we didn't go all crazy on the teacher. We didn't go all crazy, say, hey, you stand up for him. You just punch him in the face as soon as he walks up to you. We basically just laid out a plan to just say, well, first, just ignore the kid. Don't even respond. Don't even react. Just walk the other way. And that kind of started an escalation of things to where, basically I told my youngest, I was like, whenever he says something to you, just laugh. Say, that's interesting. Say, huh, that's amazing that you'd say something like that. And literally, I mean, I'm not kidding, Jenny. Within another month or so, say by Christmas time of last year, that bully was already almost one of my son's best friends.
Really?
Just because my youngest realized that he was feeding that by getting so upset and going all crazy and, getting in his face and, doing all this stuff, as soon as he realized to just completely let those things bounce off of him in his own way. I mean, I couldn't make him do it. I could just kind of help him.
Right. Sure.
But
just give him direction.
Yeah. This whole second semester is completely turned around. And like the kid wants to come to our house and, do all this stuff. And I mean, I'm happy. I mean, I'm because he doesn't have a very good home life. He has a terrible home life.
Yeah.
And he just brings that to school.
Yeah.
But, that's something positive, by empowering my son and letting him realize he can solve this problem himself. He doesn't need his teacher's intervention or the schools or counselors or all this stuff. He can do it. And it's turned around for a very positive thing for both of them.
That is an excellent example. I mean, it very much is, but it also goes back to what we were talking about the chaplains. I mean, this kind of thing should be happening outside of school, just like it did with your son. And now this kid who's got a troubled home life is able to come to your house and see a functioning home, which will help him so much more, than anything else would. So I don't see the need, and I can only see bad things coming, from something like that. So let me just finish what so Moms for Liberty Oklahoma told the Daily Caller it also has concerns that the broad language of this bill allows the state to create legislation that would jail Oklahomans over hurt feelings. The main issue is the added verbiage of severe emotional distress to the current language. If convicted, a person could be fined or jailed. Every American should be alarmed by this, and every person should know that we cannot and should not legislate feelings. The Oklahoma Attorney General should know this better than the average person, Moms for Liberty Oklahoma Tulsa County Chapter Chair Janice Danforth said. If we start creating laws to punish someone because they cause severe emotional distress, which is going to be drastically different from person to person, we're on a very slippery slope. Who's going to determine the severe emotional distress, and what type of emotional distress is considered severe? The answer to both of those questions is subjective, and because of that, this bill is dangerous, she continued. So again, I mean, I'm becoming this huge cynic, I hate to say, I mean, it's just like, I don't think we're going to fix anything. Everything's screwed up, and I get it. People are like, shut up. Well, here's a really good example of one person taking the time to get on Twitter and doing her due diligence about getting the word out. And she actually made a national story out of it over that. And that was one person, so we can do these things. These things are doable. It's just an actual fact. But we have to be able to not be afraid to stand up and say them. And on the other hand, we also have to be able to see these things coming. And I think that's something, again, that we're not seeing. We're not, and I'll give you a really good example of this. We talked about it the other day, but I want to talk about it just briefly again today, even though we did kind of do it to death the other day. So we talked about this. Stitt signs controversial Oklahoma immigration bill. And here's exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody says, because I've seen social media, I've seen people post this going, oh, thank God for Governor Stitt, and he's going to help us with them. We're not going to blah, blah. I've seen him, I've seen them do this. And I think to myself, yeah, you're a big fat cynic. And I just don't trust anybody or anything anymore at this particular point. And so maybe that's part of my problem. I look at everything through that lens, but people, you've got to start doing the same thing. At least to be able to say, well, maybe our Republicans aren't that great. Maybe we should be watchdogging what they're saying. Maybe we should be paying more attention and not just going, well, they're Republicans. They're great. It's not Frosted Flakes.
Well, it's by name only.
Great. It's not that.
It's literally by name only. They're Republicans by name only.
So here's the bill, basically. And so I'm going to go over to this tab, this is a letter that it's on the state website. This is a letter that the governor wrote to the Speaker of the House. And he basically says, I'm so sorry that this bill was even necessary, but here are several things that bothered me, and I have to read it because it won't make sense for me to just, try to come up with it. Our hand has been forced by the unprecedented border security crisis that has seen more than 52,000 Chinese nationalists, along with terror organizations, illegally infiltrate and wreak havoc on our great nation and state. So let's just sit on that one sentence. What do you see about that sentence? I see two things. I see we've got a blame game and then we've got a diversion. So let's see where that is. The unprecedented border security crisis. Okay, so that's all Biden's problem. I'm not saying it's not, but here's the thing. There are 50 states, 52 according to Obama, but there are really 50. And there are 50 states, and all of those states, according to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which I get, it's a living document, who really cares about it anymore, but it is in the 10th Amendment to the Constitution that says states are basically of themselves, except for a few things that the federal government has responsibility for. Guess what, guys? You're on your own. All right. So we could literally, just like any other state in the union, could literally say we could build a wall around the state if we wanted to.
Yeah.
We literally could. And then just go, that's what we're doing. Stick it. But we don't want to believe this. We want to believe that the federal government is all important. It's the same thing. You and I have talked about this before. You see the grassroots, we've got a podcast about what's going on in Oklahoma and everything and the things that matter to Oklahomans. But we're so involved with these national people who talk about national problems. And I'm not saying that they don't affect us and that they're not problematic. They are. But you live in a state which used to be a red state, which used to be considered a Bible Belt state. And we don't have that anymore, but people aren't readjusting their thinking. And until you readjust your thinking, we can't take on head on the problems that we're facing. So that's the first thing that was bad. The second thing is 52,000 Chinese nationals. Do you know where the Chinese nationals really came into the picture through the marijuana industry. I shared that with you the other day, a great series that the Frontier had done on the Chinese nationals entering Oklahoma because of the marijuana industry, and the fact that we had, as a state, become the largest importer of illegal marijuana in all of the 50. So he basically then put it off on something that isn't an issue here with immigration. That is a problem, but that could have been dealt with the marijuana laws, and they chose not to do that. They're getting slowly back to doing it, but that was Wild West initially, right? And they just didn't do it. Okay, so now let's go on and see. We cannot sit idle as threats to our safety are on the rise due to the Biden administration's complete failure to offer even minimal protections. We have an obligation to keep our community safe. And that is true. He absolutely does. That's one of his sworn duties. And this bill will disincentivize thugs from choosing Oklahoma as a place to operate criminal enterprises after having illegally come to our country through the southern border. Do you know that the Chinese aren't even coming through the southern border? By the way, they're flying in on airplanes. It was documented by the writer who did the study in the series in Frontier. So that's not even an issue there. Simply put, will not tolerate threats to our communities and will not become home to sanctuary cities. Just as the rationale for House Bill 4156 has been made apparent, we must be perfectly clear about what this bill is not. So he's going to tell you what the bill is not. It isn't aimed at the honest, hardworking Hispanic community here chasing the American dream. So there are no, according to Governor Stitt, there are no Hispanics coming across the border. I'm sorry, there are 18% of people who illegally cross the southern border are Mexican nationals. Do you know that Hispanics actually encompass any Spanish-speaking or nation? So that completely takes care of all of the people who are coming over from from Panama and further south.
Yeah.
So he just throws up his hands and goes, oh, well, we're only going to talk about the Mexican nationals here. Is this because we have a Mexican consul in Oklahoma? Why do we have that? We're not even a state that you can't even get on an international flight here, I don't believe. I think you have to go through an international hub, and I don't think, I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, somebody who's watching. I don't think Wiley Post is. So if that's the case, then that doesn't, I'm confused. So, and the intent certainly is not to separate families here for right reasons with pure intention. So he said honest and pure. It's not Mexicans. There are only 18% of the people who are here illegally. We're not going to touch the rest of the Hispanic populations because if it's only 18%. So you're telling me that the rest of them are Chinese nationals? That's like 82% of, that's a pretty huge number. We're still talking about 82% of people. That's all Chinese nationals. The bill is not intended as a creative mechanism to begin randomly rounding up individuals engaged in honest labor. What's honest labor? Are you here legally? And didn't we make this point the other day? And I think this is a point we should probably... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what if you don't think that the American, what if you're not affected by being here illegal or not? What if you think you just have the right to be here? You know what I mean?
No.
Well, we're going into that mentality of what you believe is what is actual, true and honest and the truth. So if you just believe you should be here, then this doesn't apply to you because you're not illegal. You believe you should be here.
Well, I mean, that's a really great point
I mean,
because
open for interpretation. That's what I'm saying. That, I mean, what's going to stop that argument from coming in?
I mean, that's a really excellent point. That's right. If you believe you deserve to be here, then yes. But we talked about this the other day, and I'm just going to mention it again. So I adopted two children from Africa, and it was a country that America didn't really have any adoption agreements with. So we ended up spending well over 20 something $1,000 just paying off people in Africa essentially to be able to get them over here. I mean, it was just the whole thing was an expensive nightmare. But the point of the matter is that we went through the channels appropriately. And your family is another a wonderful example of coming to America.
Yeah. My dad immigrated here. My grandmother on my mom's side immigrated here. They had to go through quarantine. They had to go through all of the testing and all of the citizenship and, everything that you have to do.
So it's exactly like the Biden administration. So my kids put themselves through college. So it's exactly, and they didn't take any student loans and they didn't need to get any, and I took student loans because I was going to college as a single mom, raising a kid and going to college. And there was no way I could do anything if I didn't do it on student loans. Well, I paid all of mine off. I paid mine off. So thank you, Biden administration, for coming along behind and then paying off other people's student loans. This is exactly the same thing. Never mind you people who want to do this legally. Never mind. I mean, we're getting that you're doing it legally, but we want to take care of those people who want to do it illegally because they're backed up and, it's taking so long to get here. And, if they're going to be here, we need to find a pathway to citizenship. I don't know how that works. So there's a pathway to citizenship. Your family used it. I used it. There's a pathway to citizenship.
Yeah, but we're
It
free
took
and
me a
independent.
year to adopt those kids.
Yeah,
A
but
year.
we're free, independent, sovereign, not reliant on the government people. I mean, these are people coming in that are going to be pretty much 100% reliant on the government for a pretty serious amount of time. So they're going to do what the government wants them to do.
So don't you think it's maybe I'm just being too hard on our governor, but don't you think it's at minimal disingenuous for our governor to go out and say that he's signing this immigration bill but then on the other hand he's like, well, but I'm gonna work out a way so that you guys can stay here because we know you're working here honestly. Because I can't even figure out how you're illegal and honest at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know how I feel about this. I mean, in a free, competitive society that's not subsidized and controlled by the government, these people can come here. They can build lives just like every other immigrant that comes in and builds a life, builds a business, does, service work, whatever it is. But if your only intention is to come here for government refuge, government benefits, which that's what all these people, I mean, am I painting with a broad brush? Probably, but probably not. I mean, ultimately, this is about, I mean, in my opinion, this is just more government control because you're going to inflate the population. So you're going to need more representation. And that representation is going to come in the form of government alliance.
Well, don't forget, do you remember last year we had the illegal driver's license bill where we were saying, well, we need these people who are here illegally to have driver's licenses so that they can get insurance so that you don't have. And people were like, well, yes, because they have to work. And I think that's the thing. We've talked about this on this show as well. This workforce notion. The workforce notion is killing everything. And it's a part of the whole UN, deal is to make sure that we're plugging people into jobs. It's not about
Well,
That's all it's
it's the
about.
that's the 2030 plan agenda. It's Cloud and Piven. If you go look up Cloud and Piven, it's the exact same thing. I mean,
We
it's
boil
just a way
people down
to,
to just the essence of what they do and
yeah,
what they're doing for government or doing to be, because it's for government. They try to put people in these jobs so that they can get more of your tax dollars so they can do whatever, send it to Ukraine. I mean, whatever it is. I mean,
well, we could go down that money road forever,
oh,
because that is, I mean, and ultimately, Jenny, to go back on your deal with the state, talking about the state putting up a fence. I mean, we are a sovereign state.
mhm.
We're not beholden to the federal government. The federal government is just there to protect our country, our rights at a very, very limited level. We're only beholden to these people. And don't forget, our state could have very easily, I was turning it back around on COVID. Our state could have very easily told the CDC,
Oh,
all these people, Fauci, all these organizations, all this federal intervention, all these federal, guidelines. They could have just said, "Hey, thanks, but we're going to do it the way we're going to do it here in Oklahoma. And we're not going to shut our towns down. We're not going to shut our churches down. We're not going to force people to wear masks. We're not going to allow this stuff to happen here. We're going to let our people decide what's best for themselves." But did our state do that? No. I
no.
mean, our state could have done that, but when you're beholden to federal dollars, just like always, I mean, that's what it comes down to. The federal government has an unlimited supply of money.
Well, because
Everybody
they can
sells
make
out.
it.
Yeah. Everybody sells out, from public education to the state at the highest levels, to federal dollars. They want those grants. They want that money. They're going to follow whatever the federal government says because they need that money.
Well, and we proved that with the whole mask ordeal during COVID. We did that research and found that, excuse me, basically schools were telling kids that they had to wear masks because they weren't going to get their COVID funds if they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So literally imposing the state will on individuals and children, mind you.
Oh, yeah.
That's what even really, I mean, I would walk around and see kids with masks on. Oh, it would
Oh, it
make
made me
me
sick.
so
It
mad.
made
I would
me
want to go up
absolutely
to
sick.
parents and go, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
These
I
kids
mean,
need to breathe.
well, and here's
They
the
need
catch
to
20.
see each
Yeah.
other."
Here's the catch of that whole deal that just infuriated me. Okay, my older kids, they can stand up for themselves. When I said, "Hey, we're not wearing masks in school," that's fine with my older kids. But like my kindergartner, you think my kindergartner is going to be able to stand up to his teacher
Right.
that's going ballistic on him, or my
Exactly.
second grader at that time, or my fifth grader at that time? And that's why we pulled all the kids. I mean, that's why we pulled them out of school at that time, because I wasn't going to just let them, be lapdogs of whatever policies, or, I don't need the school to protect my kids in that way.
Yeah.
I'm a dad. It's my job to protect my kids' health, not the school. I sent them there for academics. That's why I sent them there, for what
Yeah.
academics they could get. I mean, what's available? Not much is available. But ultimately, Jenny, I mean, you know how I feel about that. And I have no problem. I mean, I tell people all the time, I didn't wear a mask. I wore a mask one day, and that's the day we had to be in court when we were suing the school, because I had to be in the courtroom, and the judge threw every single person out of the courtroom that didn't have a mask on.
Really?
Yeah, a good friend of mine that was a plaintiff that would not put a mask on, threw him out of the room. But I had to be in there, so that's the only day I ever wore a mask.
Wow.
And I never wore a mask outside of that. And had it not been necessary, that, I mean, I was I had to be in there for all kinds of reasons. And had I not had to be in there, I would have been thrown out, because I wouldn't put a mask on. I wouldn't have given the satisfaction.
Yeah.
But that was the only time I gave in on that.
I think I remember, well, I definitely remember I was coming out of a liquor store. I was in a liquor store, and there was a guy that was in there that, was talking to the clerk, and he sounded pretty like a fairly red pill, but he had this bandana on, to kind of cover up his face. And I was like, well, why are you wearing that? And he was like, well, because, I just don't want to upset people. And, I know that we're supposed to. And I said, well, who said we're supposed to? And he said, well, like the state said we're supposed to. And I said, well, but you're an individual person. I mean, can't you decide what's right for you? And he goes, you should have seen his face. He was like, well, yeah. And I said, well, I said, so don't you kind of want to decide what's right for you then? And then you choose, make that choice. And he was like, well, yeah, I guess I never thought about it like that. And yanked that mask, yanked that bandana down. And I was like, I think that's the sad state of affairs. It's kind of like we talked about this briefly one day. People serve on boards, like hospital boards or, nonprofit boards or, fill in a blank. They serve on these boards. And I've served on numerous of them. And one thing that I've found serving on numerous boards is this. You're not going to get people, I mean, literally the CEO or the chairman or whoever would have to possibly murder somebody in front of the entire board. And that's even an iffy proposition. Most of the time, board members just go sign off, sign off, sign off, sign off. They don't really pay any attention. They're afraid that if they say something about what's going on, people are going to look at them funny. And these boards, just like school boards, they become just like the legislature.
It's a matter of formality. It's literally just a matter of formality.
And they become these little echo chambers of themselves.
Yeah.
Because nobody really wants to speak out or say anything. So then they have to figure out how they're going to be able to do it without speaking out. And so that they can't really, so they'll just sign off. I mean, it's the craziest thing. People literally have lost the entire concept of individual liberty. I think they literally have lost it.
Yeah, but I mean, we can blame that on the degradation of schools over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, literally probably since the Department of Education came in. I mean, you had, as you rewind into this country, I mean, you literally have very small schools that taught just pure academics and how to survive. I mean, we're into a place of decadence now to where everything is self-serving and, we're always constantly, getting materialized with everything. And, I don't think there's any way around. I mean, I think it's only going to get worse. I mean, you were saying you're a cynic. I mean, I try to be as realistic as possible because that's my job. My job is to look at the economics of the world in order for our businesses and everything else to survive. I mean, we have to make the proper investments where we can.
Right.
But I'm just telling you, when you look at things in black and white, which is for me, you just look at the money and how money is involved in whatever it is we're looking at, because that's all that matters for us
anymore.
Is we look at who the players are, why that is, at the monetary level. We try to be as apolitical as possible. But I'm just telling you, I think we're in major trouble. I mean, this country's got some major issues. And I was going to tell you back at the beginning when we were talking about all the financial stuff, I had pretty in-depth conversation with Mark Sherwood when he was running for governor. And I told him at that time, I said, Mark, we need to have in this state, we need to have a depository for gold and silver. We need to have these types of investments at the state level in infrastructure and resources and energy and these alternatives and things like that. And I mean, he was 100% right on. Yeah. And it just boggles my mind when you have business people at the government level that don't see that. I mean, that type of independence. I mean, Texas has multiple state depositories for gold and silver. I mean, they literally, I mean, they could issue their own currency, literally, if they wanted to. I hate to be so dependent on the US dollar, which is completely fake,
Yeah.
and take all that money at the state level. I mean, we need to have in this state, we've got plenty of smart people, we've got plenty of resources. We need to be a lot more independent, in my opinion. I wish it would get taken a little more seriously
Yeah,
before.
but again, it's not going to happen when you have, because I keep sitting here thinking, what is the rationale for to play this game of, I'm going to say that we're doing this, but then on the other hand, I'm going to do, I'm going to set up this task force so we can see how quickly we can get visas for people who are here doing honest work illegally. And the only thing I can come up with is, the Chamber of Commerce, I believe, is the root of pretty much all evil. I mean, I know it was during the Common Core fight. They doubled down on Common Core and called parents names. And I mean, it was just crazy. It really hit me at the time how bad the Chamber of Commerce really has become. And I think there's so much money wrapped up in these businesses that then, give the money to the chamber. And there's so much money in that I think that's the reason why he's going to figure out a way to make anything legal, so that we can just make sure that we've got these businesses, stocked with employees. But in the meantime, people like my kids are going, I can't get a job. I mean, I just want to go to McDonald's and get a job, so I've got some walking around money, and I can't find a job. So, I mean, this whole, well, Americans aren't going to do the kind of jobs that these people are going to do. That's denigrating to those people, number one. I mean, that's just almost, I'm not going to call it racist, because it could be anything, but it's denigrating.
Yeah, let me tell you something, Jenny. I know people personally that literally started a lawn business that are now multi almost million, high millions, 100, 200 million, 300 million net worth because
on
of
a lawn service.
Well, because of the work ethic, by having to do physical work,
right?
In the beginning to get going. Because if all you're doing is taking a government check in one way or another, then you're never going to develop those traits and attributes that make you successful, because you have to be willing to do the things that other people don't want to do. That's why they're bringing in and saying all these people, because a lot of people don't want to go out there and mow yards or do this work or that. But you know what? If they do, they're going to figure out real quick, because we're smart. Hey, how do I make this even better? How do I find and employ other people to help me build this, to make it better, to scale this thing? And that's how this country was created in the first place, because we're smart, intuitive, a lot of ingenuity. We said, hey, how can we make this better? How can we do this better? How can we be more efficient? That's how people are. And that's why my biggest, gripe with the schools are, you have no goals. You have no workflow. You have no roadmap for these kids to learn how to work, to learn how to think, to learn how to be intuitive and have that ingenuity and how to think, man, if I start this, I can make it like this and this and this and this. I mean, that's how all these entrepreneurs come about. But what I was going to say, when you were talking about the state, the money, you just said, the money in all these things, I wanted to just expand on that a little bit. It's not just money. It's literal corporate cronyism.
Yes.
I mean, that's literally what it is.
Absolutely. 100%.
You have this cronyism in the Chamber of Commerce, in all these city councils, in with all these developers and all these people that have larger interests. You have this cronyism, and that, I mean, when you fast forward that, or let's say if we rewind that to like a Marxist tenet, that's what fascism is. I mean, that's the melding of the corporate basically running the government. I mean, that's what it is. That's what we're looking at, but it's in such a watered down way. People don't realize it, but you have these large corporations and that run this government. I mean, that's the whole thing about the economy and all this stuff and Biden and politics, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's all smoke and mirrors, because behind those people are these massive corporations this country has all these laws are written to protect those people, to protect those billionaires.
Which is why we don't have individual liberty.
Yeah.
Which is why our individual liberty is a.
Yeah. They don't want us impeding on their businesses. They don't want us being, figuring out how to do what they do even better and provide better services, provide more freedom, provide more rights, provide a better lifestyle, make the value of your dollar go up, not down.
Well, I have to say this because I told you the other day I was reading a Brave New World. And so this morning, listening, I think most
George
people
Orwell.
who listen know that I listen.
George
but anyway,
Orwell, that was the other author. We both went blank on George Orwell, 1984. It popped right as we got out of the podcast. I was like, George Orwell.
George Orwell.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. But and Michael York is reading this version, and so it's phenomenal. I just love listening to him talk, and he does the voices. It's great. But anyway, it just hit me while I was walking this morning and listening to the book, and it just hit me this morning. We've talked about this before, and we've talked about it in terms of Common Core, where you have the letter from oh gosh, I can see his face now and I can't think of what his name is, to Hillary Clinton, Mark Tucker, to Hillary Clinton, that was literally read into the congressional record. And it's about, Mark Tucker saying, well, America is just going to be this land of people who think for a living. We're not going to do any of the dirty work. We're going to farm that out. We're going to be the ones that think, and we'll be the shining city on the hill because we'll be clean and, all of that kind of thing. And so I was listening to the book this morning, and they were talking about that's how the Brave New World is. It's shiny and clean. Kids are brought up in test tubes. They're not brought up, with families. The couple, and there are no couples because sexual promiscuity is the rule, not the sideline. And I was even talking, Janelle Batts and I went to lunch the other day, and we were talking, she read it recently too. And we were talking about how we've been complaining about these books for children, and how sexual and over sexualized and developmentally inappropriate they are for these kids. And yet that's what's going on in A Brave New World. Aldous Huxley wrote in 1920 that there are these little naked kids running around, and all they're doing is trying to figure out how to have sex with each other as young as 7. And that's okay. And that's what they're doing, because what that does then is it changes their ability to care about really anything. And so these people don't care about anything. They just want things to be clean. They're constantly propagandized. And they're funneled into jobs by the government. The big government and the pharmaceutical industry funnels them into jobs so they don't have to worry themselves with anything, trying to find a job or, and we're really diving down that path so quickly. It's not even funny. And as I was reading that this morning, I thought, this is how the elitists think of us, because these two people go to an Indian reservation, which is a Native American reservation, which is the only thing left. And they go visit this, and it's dirty, and it's people stink. And how can you do that? And you actually have sex with each other and have babies, and that's just horrifying, and it came brilliantly into my mind this morning how this is the elitist belief. This is what they want. They want those of us who, literally might smell and do a job for a living. They want those of us out here so they can take over their gleaming skylines and cities and be in charge of funneling everybody into these jobs so they don't have to do it, and they can, take their soma, i.e. marijuana, and be happy. And that's all they want to do is be happy. It's just crazy. And people are okay with this.
Yeah.
They're okay with it.
Yeah. Well, I could tell a couple stories on that, which I will at some point, because they're really, really funny, even though it wouldn't take very long.
Well, do one, and then we'll get off, because it's already 1:30.
a real good friend of mine. He's an older gentleman. He's in his 70s. I'd go sit with him, at lunch, and we just hang out. He's super unbelievable guy. Anyway, he loved to watch Jerry Springer. I mean, just loved. That's his literal favorite show. Every day he's watching Jerry Springer, and he's he gets such a kick out of these people on there. Okay. So anyway, one day we were talking, and I was talking about, I was ranting on the government. And he's like, "Oh, the government never do anything like that." And I simply said, "Hey, haven't you heard of the Tuskegee experiments?"
Oof.
I said, where the government gave community of black people syphilis for like 50, 60 years. He's like, "They never have," went all crazy on me. So I said, "Let me show you something." So I just brought up the clip of Bill Clinton one time, giving an address, apologizing for all of that. He literally said, "This was a bad, experiment run. We should have never done this. It should have never went on that, the whole 9 yards." So anyway, just a day later, I'm talking about globalism, and he's like, "There's no global." I'm like, "Okay." I said, let me just give you a little anecdote here. So we're watching Jerry Springer, and they have these absolute morons on this show. So I said, let me just put something in perspective here. I said, we're sitting here. I said, you and I said, we can agree. I said, I'm not saying like I'm so much better than these people or better off, or I'm smarter, I have more money. Sure. I said, but we can kind of agree. We're in a little better, we have a better thought process. We could probably make better decisions than these people on this show. In our life, in our business, with our money, with our families, we can pretty much, we could really help them make better decisions for themselves. I said, you agree? He's like, "Oh yeah." I said, okay. I said, because we're about, same education, same, financial status. I said, okay. I said, let's take what we are and multiply that by 1,000 or 1,000,000 times. I said, what do you think those, I said, we're looking at these people and we're making fun of them and we're laughing, and they're literally just one level of socioeconomic below us, we think. I said, what do you think someone that's got 1,000 or 1,000,000 times the money, the access, the power, the education, what do you think they think about us? I said, it's not rocket science. I said, there's people that, own and control this world, and they're not that excited about us. I said, just like we're not excited about these people on TV. They're entertainment. Yeah. I said, at some point you got to realize this stuff is real. These people think like this.
Yeah.
But anyway, on another vein, because I know we're already hour 32, what I was going to say on the whole job side, when you teach a kid, and this goes back in education and the whole 9 yards, but when you physically do something, create something, build something, repair something, service something, when you do that, you feel 100 times better. You have self-worth. You don't need the material, all the material accolades, all the material stuff that you got to have to make yourself feel good. When you go do a service or build a business or even work hard for someone else, you feel better because you've done something, you've contributed. And then that's when you can start to really build and escalate and become better and better. But if you never have that, if all you have is subsidy and all you have is just basic, I need this, instead of I want to do this, I want to build this, I want to participate in this, I want to contribute. Even if you're raking leaves as a kid, you go rake leaves and you make $20 or $50 in a day or something, or you're a waitress and you make $100 in tips on the weekend, you're going to feel pretty good because you've done something that you earned. And that's what we're missing. There's so much replacement of all those old values of hard work. We were the hardest working people in the world. That's why we built the greatest country. Correct. On top of being the most moral. But we're missing that now because we live in that decadence. We live in just replace, we want our lives to be as easy as possible. I want to work. I want to build. And that's what I try to teach my kids.
Well, and I think that's what we should all be teaching our kids. But if you're like my husband, he's sick of building for me. So
well, you better lay him out a new roadmap, something that'll divert that.
We did the one giant project, and now he's like, projects. All right. Well, we'll get off of here for today. I don't know. If you got anything from from the show today, pass it on. Pass it on, because again, waking people up is the beginning part, because once it's kind of like buying a pink car. You never see pink cars until you buy a pink car, and then you see pink cars everywhere. And that's kind of where we have to be, because we can't vote people in that are going to help us do the right thing and protect our individual liberty if we can't get people to understand that their individual liberty is threatened, or to even care that they have individual liberty. So that has to be our number one thing here. We have literally got to educate people as quickly as we can, because once they see it, then they're a lot more willing to go out and vote for the people who, or even run for office themselves, but vote for the people who are willing to turn this around and stand for individual liberty and stand for state autonomy and getting rid of, getting us out of this nonsense. So please just do that.
Well, if we
and we had a nice audience today, so thank you for joining us.
Well, if we keep making and letting the government be responsible for everything, then they're gladly going to take the reins on that.
They will, and they're never going to give them back.
Yeah.
Government
you never see a legislator.
Shrinks.
Yeah, you never see a legislator say, "Hey,
never shrinks.
Why don't we go in here and take off about 10% of these crazy, useless laws?"
Yeah, see, Nathan Dahm used to be into repealing laws, and he did that for a number of years. And then, once you get inculcated into the Senate think or the House think, you kind of quit becoming an individual who had these ideas. And then, we start running bills like those that are going to infringe on our free speech. So,
depending on how you feel.
But he's running the state Republican convention this weekend, so yay. All right, well, just to let you know, on golly, it's already May, isn't it? Yeah. So we are going to, on Wednesday, May 8th, so that's next Wednesday. That was usually Julianne's day, but I've got a person that I want everybody to meet, because what she's going through is really important for all of us. Her name is Leanne Clinton. She's from Enid, and they are developing this huge solar project in Enid, and she has uncovered a whole bunch of nonsense about this that needs to come to the forefront immediately so we can help. So she's got some way, of spreading the information. So we're going to have Leanne on. And then I just talked to Sherry Conley before we came on. She's planning on being on Friday on a regular day. So, and we were both laughing, because I know we talked about in the last podcast what we were going to talk about this time, and both of us forgot. So I'll have to go back and look at that, unless somebody knows and they want to let me know right now. So, anything else for any exciting plans for the weekend?
No, tomorrow is my mom's 70th birthday. So happy birthday to my mom.
Happy birthday, Michael's mom.
Yeah. And my son's playing in a state golf tournament Monday, Tuesday.
Okay. All right.
He medaled last week, so hopefully he plays pretty well.
Well, you would hope that with a golf pro father that you would have at least one of them. You should have taught the girls, though, because they're the ones that are getting the great scholarships, and so few girls want to go into golf.
I know. I tried. Trust me, I tried. She didn't want to do it, so can't make her.
Okay, so that's what we've got for next week. I don't have any exciting plans for the weekend either. I'm just not going to be at the convention, I've decided. So y'all who are going, have fun. All right. Michael, it's always fun to be with you as usual. And thank you so much for being with us. All of you guys who tuned in, we really, really appreciate that. And If you'd like to donate, please go to rope2.org. We've got a great donation page you can go to, and you can find it right there on the right hand side, no matter what page you're on. So do that. You can also sign up for our newsletter if you go to rope2.org. So, and I try to send that out every single Monday with the clips and more. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.